to capitalize on one of our assets that we lost in title because she went from acting to retired. But she's still with us, and she's going to give us a talk today, and we're really looking forward to it. Dr. Sally Maggard is joining us, and I told Sally this morning, I said, I'm not big on long introductions, so I won't give a long introduction. You guys all know how to read. Well, Bo, I can read it to you afterwards. But I will say, I will say this. Back in 2006, I went to the Program Leadership Network meeting, and it was my first entree into what community development and extension was all about. And I saw this diminutive, cute, silver-haired person bouncing around all over the meeting, and I was like, I need to get to know this woman. I don't know why, but I need to get to know her. And every year I look forward to PLN because I knew I was going to get a chance to see Sally and sit down and talk with her and bounce ideas off of her and learn from her. And so I'm excited to have Dr. Sally Maggard join us today so you can have the same thing or be afforded the same opportunity to learn from Dr. Maggard today. So welcome.
Down. It's always been a problem. Okay. Let's see. Can you get it up?
Yeah, I'm trying.
Listen, I'm really delighted to be here today, and I want to begin by giving you all congratulations. This is your 8th conference, and this is a most remarkable bunch of people. I've bounced around a lot more than Southern PLN, so I know a whole lot of you, and I'm just delighted to be able to be here. I want to thank Michael and Scott, who've been working hard on getting this conference together, for the opportunity to be here, and Tim. I don't know who thought this up, but I really appreciate it, and as you see that thing there that says retired, I'm probably not going to have a lot more chances to spend time with you, but it's just great to be here. So I want to not only thank Tim, but wish Michael a lot of good luck as you take over running NACDEP. So in addition to being delighted to be here with you guys, I hope this will work. I'm really happy to be in the West again. I really want to convey my thanks to Stan Albrecht, an old friend of mine from rural sociology, and who's a remarkable president, and Noelle Cockett, who's been, you heard last night, she's been fabulous supporter of the Western Rural Development Center, which is how I got to know her. And I want to thank Don and the WRDC staff for the work that they've done in the West and in hosting NACDEP. Too. Listen, this is a puzzling region of the country. It's great to visit it. It's puzzling. It's got a lot of common needs, but it's also got some very great differences. And that's much like my retirement spot, which is Central Appalachia. So in the way of thinking about this very confusing region, the Western Rural Development Center Board one year gave me a jackalope. And I didn't know what the thing was. I mean, this was really, truly amazing. And Glenn Whipple in Wyoming was one of the people behind this, but so was Tom Harris in Nevada behind this. And so they really gave me a jackalope. I'd never heard of him. I'm from Appalachia. I'd heard of some other things and strange creatures, but so I had to figure this out. So I adopted old jackalope and named him D.C. Lope. So for several years, he tried really hard to rent a condominium. For several years, he tried to get office space at USDA. He tried to buy a smart card so he could use the transit system. He tried to enjoy Washington's great restaurants, which helped me become the size I am today. But he just simply created too much rural to urban confusion. So old Lope retired, and he went to my farm in Pocahontas County ahead of me. So I'll be joining him soon. Have you got the thing, Mike? Is that how we're doing it?
It's not working, so you just let me know.
Okay. My focus today is on sort of the modern CRED period. I was sort of tempted. I did a lot of reading getting ready for this, including going back and reading 1960 stuff when this area was really created. But it's really in the last 10 or 15 years or so, and I want to go through sort of beginnings and some milestones and some challenges. We're probably not going to have time to do that, but I'll do some of it. So let's go to the next slide. I want to deliver your punchline up front. What I want to tell you guys, who I know well over these years, you are no longer the best kept secret. I just don't want to hear that again. In fact, you all are, in my mind, a national model now. And I really believe that. I mean, you really are. So I go back, I just want to see some hands, because we really got some age changing, which is fabulous, because that means I know NACDEP is going to continue. But how many of you all in this room were actually in Orlando in 2002 at that conference? Look at that. I see this as a major thing for who you are today. This was a period when we were having big debates, and where's Cornelia? Are you back there? Cornelia was part of the conversations then about what's happening in the late 1990s about how we structure cooperative extension. Do we keep these base teams? Do we keep these initiatives? How do we do this? Because people were coming to us, like the mayor said, with many new needs and many new demands, and we just didn't know how to respond. So one of the things that came up was creating base program strategic teams. So the system was charged to have these teams and to come forward with how to respond. Who was first at the bat? CRED, step forward first. They decided in this group, and a number of you were here, Kathy Tweeton, Bo, Stefan, Walt Whitmer, a number of you were in this group that was trying to figure out what to do, and we decided we were going to have a national conference. I was pretty new at USDA at the time, but I got to be part of this, and I consider this conference in Orlando one of the most exciting ones I've ever attended. We have one of our wonderful awards named for, Bonnie Teeter, and Bonnie was helping to organize this conference, and she told me, I just worry, Sally, I'm not even sure we're going to get 200 people. We had to cap that conference at 300, and we had more than 300 people there. Every region of the nation was represented, and that includes 2 of your regions that didn't have very many people told by their directors to work in this area. The West was there, and it was one of the biggest groups at the conference. Absolutely, you were. This conference made it clear beyond a doubt that people across the country had needs, but that you did too. Because one of the things that came out of that conference is we need training, we need training, we need training. So we came up with a whole lot of things that we needed to do. And, I forgot this. One of the great quotes of the period was by Chester Faylis. And Bo published this in one of his newsletters from the Southern Rural Development Center. But Chester said, if Extension's gonna survive, Extension will not survive if people keep changing and we don't. So this was a period when we had to figure out how are we going to change. Okay, so we had to train a lot of people. And there were just a couple of examples that I've put up here for you. And one of the training things I think that we celebrate now is what we did through e-commerce. This came through Congress looking at us and saying through the Southern Rural Development Center and the sister centers, how are we going to respond to the digital literacy area? So the e-commerce demonstration project has done wonderful work reviewing curriculum, building curriculum, and training you all in how to use it and getting it out. And it has now become a national initiative. Another example is how many of you are involved in the community of practice, entrepreneurs in their communities. Look at those hands go up. I went to some of these early meetings, and I couldn't believe the work that had to go into this. And I was worried that this was not going to work. How could you all maintain this and support this 24/7 extension? But you were the pioneer. Some pioneer proposals were invited in. You applied, and you got one of the very first of these extension community of practice grants and built that into what it is today. It's a leading community of practice in the 24/7 e-extension movement. So another one, let's switch now, is, let's go this way. This is going to be, it's working out. That'll help a little bit. We also, at this time, in addition to some of these specialized trainings in areas where we really needed to build competencies, we decided we needed to have a fundamental course for us. We have so many people doing community development work now as part of their other assignments. They needed to be trained. And so we came up with saying, let me get Rod Howland to Washington for a little while, and I wanted him to be here so I could thank him yet again for that. And he reached out to some of his colleagues, Janet Ayers, Alan Bearfield, and others, and they said, let's get a team and figure out what that foundations of practice ought to look like. So we flew them off to Denver, where they were kind of isolated with each other, and they wrote the white paper, which then said, how are we going to launch this? And the North Central took the lead and tried it out and did a pilot in the Foundations of Practice training, and it's now a national training program. We still got to figure out how we're going to provide leadership to it, Mary, and those of you who are doing that. But this is what we consider to be the basics that everybody needs to know. And why is that important? Because I'm telling you, your field, I believe, is the foundation for all the other work we do in the system. I really believe that. So don't forget that we've got to keep this Foundations of Practice work going. 3 levels of expertise. The centers are one of your great partners in having this work. I'm not sure. Yeah, here we go. Also at this period, it was like, all right, we've got to have all this training, but boy, do we ever need an organization. And so the NACDEP campaign really sort of merged out of Orlando. We had to go through the process of figuring out who JCEP is and what that means to work with them and get them to approve us. And JCEP actually said, we're going to count the Orlando conference because you have to have like 5 years from your application before you're accepted. And then the inaugural conference was in 2005 here. Let's see. I think I'm off. Oh, yeah. I think at this point, we had begun to get enough recognition that people were really paying a lot of attention to us and that our national recognition was really growing. One of the things I want you all to keep in your mind as you go forward is that you are unique in this system and having a partnership with the regional rural development centers. It's like a marriage made in heaven. So keep working on it. Keep thinking about it. And I think that puts you in a better place than practically all the other areas in cooperative extension. One of the examples about what can happen from that is the rural entrepreneurship listening sessions that we had around the nation. There you are in the West again. And this is where they were held, and cooperative extension, I mean, you're part of cooperative extension, and the centers made all this happen. And again, this is part of why your recognition grew. Another example of your home runs during this period, I want to give you 2 of them. Let's have hands again. How many of you are working in the Stronger Economies Together program today? And this is going to grow. This is really impressive. It's the new thinking, and this is all over Washington, and it's all over the country. I heard Stan Albrecht talk about it last night. I think I hear the mayor talking about it. Is that we have to think about regional economies that are place-based but linking new places together, new ways of thinking. One of the things that's happened coming out of SET is SET funds you to a certain level, and you get yourself ready, and this remarkable group of people who've come together for a plan for the future. But what happens then? Because there's no more money. It's in your hands at the time. And Mary Simon Lucy, are you here somewhere? I've been looking for you. Mary's group said when they got to this point, we're not done, and they literally wrote and signed the Declaration of Interdependence to keep all those partners who'd done the planning together and working in the future. Another example of hitting a home run and having a great national impact is what's emerging now through the Ready Communities program, which is the partnership with FEMA. So you have the partnership with USDA Rural Development, big old federal partner, partnership with FEMA, big old federal partner. Who used to think you could work with bodies like that? But look what happens when you can. This is just a map that I got from Bo about states that are currently part of SET. We know that's going to grow. More states are going to come online, and we'll see this kind of work continue. Let's go a little faster. There's a third partnership that I just want to mention that you're going to get in heavy, I know, and that is some of the new work that's going to emerge with the Department of Commerce around the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. You're going to be really working hard to help people get broadband accepted and adopted and used. There's great national interest to do this. Your kind of world was called to the table to figure out, help the national level figure out how this is going to work. And I think you can see another pattern, much like we've had with SET and the Ready Communities program emerging around this area of broadband. So where are you going? One of the things that you know, and by the way, your secretary figured it out too, that no one community can prosper in isolation. So you're going to keep working on what is this sort of new regionalism that you're thinking about as you go forward. I think it's a watershed moment, and so I just want you to think about paradigm shifts for just a minute. See this top one? This is my favorite one. I mean, I live in a world where I've spent almost 13 years going to the table at important meetings and reminding them that rural America exists. But rural is not residual. And I can tell you, nobody is going to put the windmills down the main street of Raleigh, North Carolina. They're going to be in rural America. And you just keep it up. You go, where is our food going to come from? We're not going to import it. I actually heard somebody in Washington say, we're just going to import our food. You know, we're just going to forget things from Chicago on until we get to the West Coast. Wrong. We are going to have sustainable food systems in this country. And it's an era in which we're not experts now working in silos, although a lot of your colleagues still have this attitude. You just got to keep working on them. You know, Bo told me once it's just patience over time. It's what really builds it. Patience over time. And we know it doesn't work. And so we have to work in collaboration. Let's see if I've got this map up. Here's an example of where we currently are spending, well, I'm not there anymore, but the federal government is currently spending a lot of money in programs that I think can connect to your world, and some of these already do. So we need to then think about how, with CRED as the baseline, see this last point? We're not divided disciplines anymore. We are a fundamental piece in your world that makes our other disciplines able to respond to these grand national challenges now. I'll give you one more thought about that. You know, we have a wonderful champion for thinking about what we're doing with food and what it means to grow it and eat it, and that is Michelle Obama. She has recently said that, on Jeopardy actually, that community solutions are required before we ever get anywhere with childhood obesity. That's my point. You can't meet these other emerging and present needs unless you're thinking about things at the level, broad level of what community means. So there are also now an important focus on place-based economies, as the president of the university said last night. I want to share, this is the Maryland, Katie O'Malley, First Lady of Maryland's comment about local food systems, but it's also in terms of this cross-disciplinary point. This is where I'm retired to now on the right. It's a little hard for you to see what it is, but it's a wall mural art project by a remarkable young woman who grew up there and who came back to do this project and built this history of the county, which she spent in a one-room schoolhouse a year thinking up and figuring out how to do, and then came downtown and a business owner gave her that wall to put it on. And this is the whole history of that place. So I think we don't ever forget the art and the culture community piece of this too, as we think about what does place-based development look like. So here we've got a lot of things on a slide with a lot of words that I'm not going to go through, but there's just so many opportunities for you now. One of the things that we know, and I'd like for you to get to know Brent Elwood well at NIFA, is that veterans are coming to you when they're figuring out where they want to be, and that's a big thing. And I've spent a lot of time as the center directors know, trying to figure out how to get a big community piece put into what Veterans Affairs is doing and what Homeland Security is doing in relation to veterans coming home, because most of our work with veterans is like to the family or to the individual or to rehabilitation and not community, and there's huge community issues with this. So I think this is going to be one of the things you do in the future. And I think you just heard the mayor, and you can hear this from your incoming president, Michael. We got to do more and more international work. It's going to be fun. So now here you go. You all have grand programs and you have grand ideas, and it just keeps happening, especially when y'all get together at meetings like this. But we got an ever-changing environment, as your current president, Tim Borich, has said, and finances are finite, and how we use them is hotly contested. So that's going to be a big issue for you. For instance, we don't know about money coming in the future for the SET program. How is that going to be structured? Where there's a will, there's a way. So one of the things I want you to do during this period is to figure out, I'm suggesting you need a new professional development training program. All of you need it. And that is to figure out who your new best friends are. Because one of the things I've talked to you about over and over is invite your staffers from your state delegation to whatever you're doing. And I get this thing back, oh, my university won't let me do that, or I'm terrified, I don't know who these people are, how do I find their names, on and on and on. Just forget that. Just get to know them. And I'll tell you, some of them are like 18 or 19 or 20, because I deal with them in Washington. You know, others are not. But, you know, they need to learn, and they don't arrive on the job knowing stuff. So get to know your people and invite them. Every time you do something, give them a call, send them a note. Betsy Newman of the Western Center is terrific about this. It's just in her blood. I mean, she came to start work with Don Albrecht, and the next thing I know, he was on NPR every other day. They can't think of anybody else to call when they want to talk about the West. Don, I guess they call that mayor a lot too, but anyway. Facebook starts showing up, and she's just grabbed social media and run with it. And I know others of you in the room are doing that. I think we need to get a bit more sophisticated about how we're doing it, but you need to get your A-list for your invitations together, you know. Who's that special group I'm going to get to come to my event? Because they've got to learn. You are the educators. You educate all the time. So educate your A-list, because they got to be able to talk about what you're doing when it comes down to the finite fight over the dollar. Okay? And I'd say that goes for your university leaders as well. Just know them all. Keep them knowing what you're doing. You don't want one person to walk down a hall in your university and not know what CRED is, which happened at NIFA just the other day. They thought CRED was an organization. I learned from Trudy this morning. What's that organization? That's an area of cooperative extension. NACDEP is the organization. We don't have a rep from NIFA here today. That's not going to happen in your universities. Make sure everybody knows what you're doing. It's in their hip pocket. It's a tool they use, the work that you do. Your work makes these people successful. Don't be afraid of it. Just embrace it. Okay, best kept secret to hard work. I can tell you it's hard to get collaborations together, and a lot of you know that, and I'm just so impressed with what I heard about Park City. But I've talked to you for years about farm bills, and everybody comes, oh, how do you do that? Well, you know, right now the Senate is working on final language for the next farm bill. The House is going to be doing it soon. And, you know, call somebody in the Sustainable Ag Coalition. They know it inside and out, how to do it. There's terrific people who just think about, you know, and Sustainable Ag can't exist without community. Think about ways to have your voice and your programs inputted into the major planning about what we're going to do through our system. And the same thing goes with science roadmaps. It's always been, oh, who goes and writes those things? Well, I'll tell you, Bo Blue got invited to be involved in that this year because of the national reputation you all have achieved. And Don Albrecht was on that committee, and Ann Tickemeyer and many others who wrote Challenge 7 of the latest science roadmap. It's just vital, so that you're not just this residual social science bunch that maybe gets invited to sit on a review panel. You got to be up front and in the main part of the dialogue and defining what we're going to do in the future. Scientific knowledge for what you do makes you guys unique. It's your niche. Keep your research friends close. I was going to do things that are running down a lot of the research I know that is pooled and used here, and remind you all that at Orlando, and Deb Tootle was one of the people who ran one of these. We had research roundtables at every single track. 7 tracks, research roundtables at every single one. It was great integration of science and education, the foundations of what we do in the land grant system. I'm so excited to announce, and I got to give an applaud to the centers for winning one of the big EFRI grants on creating a new policy center. Now, this is not going to be someone over there that sort of has run a policy center forever that once in a while you talk to. This is going to be a policy center for you. So I'm so thrilled about this. You want to learn about how it's going to work, input, be a great resource for the policy center as it develops. There's other great programs that have built research that we need. The Ridge Center targets vulnerable populations about nutrition and health. And anyway, there's more. And the bottom piece on this is, please, I know we seem like we're far away when we're in Washington, meet your new guy. The new director of NIFA is from the land grant system, not Monsanto. I did get along with that guy pretty well. I actually liked him. But Sonny is going to be a lot of fun for you to work with. And he understands a lot about who you are and where you come from. He has sat on one of the boards of the Rural Development Center, so I think it's a ticket forward for you. Instead of me saying, just think of NIFA as a clerical bunch, think about a new leadership that's arrived and try to help that be your organization, your federal entity to represent you. Okay, I want to close now by inviting you to come to Washington. And I want to congratulate Tim Borch and his colleagues at Iowa State University. The Smithsonian this year is excited about this big anniversary and the creation of USDA and the land grant university system 150 years ago. And this year, on the Mall, it is featuring campus and community. And it had a competition for people who might do exhibits. And these guys put together a fascinating proposal to do a living exhibit at the Smithsonian on the Mall. And these are the dates for when it's going to be there. And it's a live living exhibit when all kinds of people who have depended on and needed and loved the institution and CRED and building communities have figured out ways to sort of film and photograph and capture those moments, and it's going to be rolling at the Smithsonian all the way. So I can't think of a better tribute to the work of CRED and cooperative extension education in this than what's going to happen there. So with that, I congratulate Iowa State and Tim, and congratulate you all, and thank you again for having me here today.